There's a new day coming for Canada, and that day brings new hope and new prosperity. The Conservatives, we have never contended we're perfect. We need your help. We need your advice and your counsel, and we will always honor your trust. Our commitment is to Canada, and our commitment is to you. Together, we're going to build a new day.
In a few days, the federal election is set to be called. Canadians across the country are concerned that we may be headed towards another Liberal government. The same Liberal government, but this time with a different leader, except worse. Today, we bring you not only a reminder of the events of 1984 that eerily mirror the events unfolding today, but we bring you a snapshot of the leadership debate, where Brian Mulroney completely trounced then unelected Prime Minister and successor to Pierre Elliott Trudeau. This will demonstrate exactly why the Conservatives won the election that year and why Pierre Poilievre, if he plays his cards right, can and will achieve the same result.
Let's take a look.
We haven't apparently been very successful tonight in identifying what it is that will happen after September the 4th. Perhaps you could be more successful in identifying what will not happen after September 4th. There's a lot of talk around that you gentlemen have hidden agendas, that harsh economic measures and harsh medicine are necessary, that you're afraid to talk about it in this campaign and will only wait until you get a mandate to bring it in.
Mr. Turner.
Is that a well-founded suspicion?
30 seconds only, please.
No, sir, it isn't. I've set forth the problem that the country faces, the problem of the public debt. I've said where we can finance our programs. I've said that the facts are out for the Canadian people. Well, the programs will speak for themselves. There'll have to be some reallocation of funding to meet the new priorities for youth, preserving our safety net for those who can't take care of themselves in this country.
Mr. Mulroney, 30 seconds only, please.
The attitude of openness to which Mr. Turner replies, here you have the Auditor General of Canada, who has to sue the Government of Canada to try and get information relating to Petrofina shares. What we are going to do is bring the House back quickly, open the books, tell the people the truth, get the Auditor General in everywhere. We're going to tell the people the facts. We're going to share with them how bad it is, because the government is hiding some of the true dimensions of our problem.
I swear the similarities of 1984 and now are astounding. Absolutely astounding. So what is Brian Mulroney talking about there? Well, the Trudeau government, the Pierre Trudeau government,
The first one,
had this huge scandal. Back then, older Canadians may remember that Petro-Canada was actually state-owned. And it was started in the mid-70s to try to allow Canada to have more control over the oil and gas sector. Now, I guess what ended up happening is Petro-Canada ended up making a purchase of a company called Petrofina, and there was allegations of liberal insiders getting rich off of it.
surprise, surprise.
And the Auditor General was trying to get documents in order to actually discover what's going on. Well, the Trudeau government didn't want to release those documents to everybody.
This sounds familiar from recent times.
And the Auditor General had tried to go to court to sue the government in order to get those documents. If only the Conservatives thought about filibustering Parliament to try and force that to happen. But this is the thing. So imagine you're listening to Brian Mulroney, but talking about the SDTC scandal. We will get in. We will open the books. We will see what happened. We will let everybody know what happened. It's unreal.
We're going to share it with Canadians. We're going to set out a true and an honest accounting. We're going to set out specific programs to get the country moving again. And together, we're going to build the new kind of prosperity beginning in the early autumn of this year.
Thank you, gentlemen. I regret so much. Our time has expired. We've now completed the 3 rounds of the debate. Each leader will have up to 4 minutes for his closing remarks. The order of speaking, of course, is the reverse of the opening statements. Mr. Mulroney will go first, then Mr. Turner, and finally Mr. Broadbent. Mr. Mulroney, please.
I think that the questions that our votes, all of our votes, will have to answer on September 4 relate to the truth that we all face together the morning after and in all the mornings thereafter, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. And some of these questions, I think, come out at us tonight. Do you really believe that if the Liberal government is returned, there is going to be any real change in the attitudes of those who have been stalking power here in Ottawa for 20 or 25 years? If you're unemployed, or if you're concerned about keeping your job, do you have any confidence in your prospects as a result of the attitudes that you have heard or seen over the last 4 years? Remember that the Liberals made 4 promises, 4 solemn undertakings to Canadians in 1980. They came before you and they said 4 things and then put them in the throne speech. First, 18 cents a gallon is too much, and it went up to over $1.50. Secondly, we're going to reduce unemployment. When they made that promise, there were 800,000 Canadians unemployed. There are now 1.5 million. Then they said we're going to reduce the growth in government expenditures. It's gone up from 60 billion to 100 billion. And then they said, we give you a formal undertaking that we are going to reduce the deficit in an orderly manner. The deficit's gone from 10 billion to $36 billion a year. It took Canada 100 years, from 1867 to 1967, to accumulate a net debt of $18 billion. And from 1968, with Mr. Turner there and his colleagues, from 1968 to today, 15 years, our net debt has gone from $18 billion to $180 billion. That's not the fault of the Americans, as Mr. Turner suggests. That's not the fault of our friends and allies. That's the fault of the people who have been running this country, who have been initiating deficit financing, who have been spending more than they could take in, who have been crippling the private sector. And so what we're saying is that we have candidates, men and women of value across Canada, who have listened to you, who are from your regions, who understand the requirements of new growth and new possibilities, the retraining that has to go on, the equality of economic opportunity, a new program of productivity enhancement. We must recapture our share of world trade. Those are where the jobs are. We've got to build this new cooperative society together with the provinces, with organized labor, with management. We have hundreds of thousands of jobs that can be built based on cooperation. Mr. Turner says that there's no cooperation. He's right. He was a member of the government that said that cooperative federalism was dead. We say it's alive. We say there's a new spirit possible in this country. There's a new day coming for Canada, and that day brings new hope and new prosperity. The Conservatives, we have never contended we're perfect. We need your help. We need your advice and your counsel, and we will always honor your trust. Our commitment is to Canada, and our commitment is to you. Together, we're going to build a new day for Canada and for all of you.
That sounds eerily similar to what's going on now.
Eerily similar, but the way in which Mulroney delivered that, there's such confidence in what he's saying.
And there's hope, too.
Yeah.
Like, look at the Liberals messed this up, but we will come in and fix it.
Well, in the way that he delivered that, right? There was criticism, but it wasn't overt, right? He said, this is all the things that they did.
Well, and it was factual.
Right.
This is all the things that were done by the Liberal Party.
And it's almost exactly what happened with this Liberal government.
Yeah, they ballooned the deficit, and now the Conservatives have to come in and clean it up. Or, I mean, I suppose the other option is that the Liberals get back in and they just keep spending, and things get even worse.
Well, and here's some of his points. Unemployment has ballooned. Same thing is happening here. Food bank usage has ballooned. One of the only things that's missing there is the housing crisis.
Yeah, and I mean, poverty is going up now. Had gone up then.
And what you hear is the previous Liberal government had completely divided the nation, had turned everybody against each other. The previous Liberal government spent more than all previous governments combined. The previous Liberal government just sank the country and has destroyed the private sector. Well, gee, look what has happened with this Liberal government over the last 10 years.
Well, because those are values of the left, right?
Right.
They don't value entrepreneurship or small business or small government or small taxes. Like, they run these huge deficits, expect us to praise them for their crazy programs that they're putting in, and Canadians become poor.
Well, in Turner is essentially saying, "Oh, well, you know, we just need another chance, folks. Just trust us this time.
We'll get it right this time, guys. Please vote for us again."
And this is what Carney is basically saying. Forget that the previous Liberal governments, spent more than every other prime minister and government combined in Canadian history. Forget that they completely screwed up our immigration system, causing a healthcare and national housing crisis and education crisis. Forget that more Canadians are visiting food banks than ever before. Forget that affordability is at an all-time low, where Canadians are food insecure across the country. We have people living in tents everywhere.
Well, and our per capita GDP is down as well. That's our quality of life.
But in Mulroney's way, he said, life wasn't like this before Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and it doesn't have to be that way after, and it won't be. So the way that he delivered that message, you know, it felt comforting. It felt confident. It felt hopeful. And this is the message that Pierre is starting to put out. If you haven't seen his I'll call it an ad about opening up the Ring of Fire, take a look. Take a look at that. That reminds me a lot of what Brian Mulroney was bringing to the table. It's a plan, it's hope, it's action, it's commitment. And the brilliant thing about it is he plans to open up all this industry 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay, getting gold, platinum, and all these precious metals out of the ground to bring a whole bunch of new jobs to Canadians, bring a whole bunch of new money into the Canadian economy, building roads to make it accessible, which will also connect into some Indigenous communities that are up there, that there isn't really any infrastructure there. So I would say all Pierre has to do, and I think this is what he is doing, is essentially follow the script of 1984. Ironically. Not that one. Follow the script of the Conservatives and Brian Mulroney. Because this is what will happen. Here are the polls as they stand today. So we're not going to go over the actual individual numbers. The one thing that I'll call out is there's this brand new polling firm that is now flushing out polls like nobody's business, called Liaison Strategies.
Well, and if you noticed, it's IVR, which is the same type of polling that ECOS uses for the most part.
So they are just pumping out polls. They have never, in the last few years, they have never released a single poll for the federal government. But now all of a sudden, they're just bombarding the polling. And guess where that data goes, folks? 338 Canada. So not even paying attention to them now. But you see the Conservatives, and if you ignore the ECOS polls, they were ahead, and then Mark Carney takes over, and then the polls shift over to the Liberals, and you're about to see a new line item up there as of early next week, where it says federal election is called. Now let's go back to 1984. So this is where Pierre Elliott Trudeau announces his resignation. Conservatives are comfortably in the lead. John Turner becomes leader of the Liberal Party. John Turner becomes Prime Minister. Oh, look at that. Complete flip of the polls to the Liberals. Then the federal election is called. Conservatives start to make ground back because they actually get some airtime because of the Liberal leadership race. And a couple of weeks after that, the French and English debates happened, which Brian Mulroney completely destroyed John Turner. And then you saw the Conservatives really start to run away with the vote, and then the federal election happens, and they completely trounce the Liberals. So far, everything is playing out point for point when it comes to now in 1984. The only difference is there's that many more polling firms that exist today than back then. So there's a lot of reason for hope here, folks, because the Conservatives are going to be getting some media coverage. An election is going to be called very shortly. And we're going to see hope start to return to this country. But like Brian Mulroney said, they need your help. They need all of your help to get this over the finish line. We've already heard from many Canadians that they're joining their EDA, that they're getting out door knocking, they're volunteering. That is phenomenal. But they need your help. Tanya was just assigned a volunteer activity from our EDA where she doesn't even have to leave the house. So there are dozens of ways that you can help your EDA to ensure that they get this over the finish line. So make sure that you do whatever you can, even if it's having conversations within your community, making sure that people know the facts. That's what we need to do to ensure that we get a change of government. And before we go, we just wanted to remind everybody of one thing. Many of you already know, some of you may not, but we are going to be launching a children's book next month, which the intent is to educate kids, young kids between 4 and 7, all about Parliament and how our government works. So this is based off of our son and his 2 dogs, and he takes a journey to Parliament, meets a bunch of friends, and he learns how our system works. And it's completely nonpartisan, and I think it's going to be a book that is going to be real helpful to the younger generation to inspire our next leaders.